It has been said that spiritual growth and finding inner peace is the highest form of service we can offer the world. How can we find the right balance between the silence and solitude that is so often conducive to spiritual progress and interacting in the physical world? So first of all, it's really important to realize that these two things are not actually meant to be separate and distinct. It's like saying, so in order for my body to work, I need to breathe, and I need to sleep, and I need to digest my food. So how do I balance those things? How do I make sure that I have time for digestion? And how do I make sure I have time for breathing? And how do I make sure that I have time for all of my endocrine systems to function? Well, when the system of the body is functioning healthfully, they actually all happen at the same time. Now, there may be certain times of the day when one is predominant. So when you're sleeping, sleep is predominant. Although that also tends to be a time in which digestion also is going very well, and the endocrine system is going very well, and repair is going on. And then there are times, for example, maybe you're practicing pranayama, or you're doing some deep breathing, or you're meditating on the breath, in which most of your awareness is on your breath. So that's going to be a focus at that time. But ultimately, all of the systems should be going together. And this is the same thing with our spiritual path. It's not one or the other. The silence that we look for is a silence that stays with us even while we're interacting in the world. Ultimately, the goal, and Pujya Swamiji speaks about it so beautifully, and in such short, sweet ways of understanding, he speaks about being noiseless amidst the noise. So it's not how do I push away the noise, but it's how do I become noiseless in the noise? How do I become silent inside? Because anybody who's ever tried to practice silence, whether as a spiritual practice in and of itself, or whether simply so that you can meditate. Because obviously in order to meditate, one of the first things you have to do is close your mouth. Close the eyes. What we find is that simply closing our mouth is not actually enough to bring us silence. The mind then goes. You could be in the quietest place in the world and unable to find peace. In fact, one of my favorite things to share is something that happens here so frequently, because Rishikesh, as you may have discovered, it's a bustling little or large spiritual hub. And I'll have people come who will say, God, it's so loud here. I can't meditate. And especially if they come during times of year when we have, these glorious spiritual programs that are going on morning till evening. It's so loud, I can't meditate. Or, I've got one of the VIP rooms overlooking the Ganga and the view is beautiful, but oh my God, it's so loud, the people outside. And I'll say to them, well, where are you from? And they say things like Maine, or New Hampshire, or the countryside of England, or, places that have a population less than this room for the state. Rishikesh has more yoga studios than those cities have people. So I say, so wait, you've come from Maine to India looking for quiet. If you can't meditate in the silence of where you live, if you can't meditate somewhere that has 5 or 10 people per square kilometer, clearly the problem is not outside. And what India gives us in all of its hustle and bustle, in the fact that there really is nowhere you can go. I mean, go up, up, up in the mountains. And you're going to find people. You're going to find villages. You're going to find yatris. You're going to find hustle and bustle. And what India offers us is the opportunity to find that noiselessness amidst the noise. Because when you learn to meditate in India, you can take that back. And whether it's the quiet of Maine or New Hampshire or the south of England, or whether it's a subway in Manhattan, that then stays with you. And so when we look at our spiritual practice, we really need both, but we need them not as separate boxes. The silence that we practice internally is meant to stay with us. And so, yes, it's a very important and wonderful practice, and whether you practice it a certain amount of time per day, like Puja Swamiji does, whether you practice it a certain number of days or weeks in a year, whether you do it a day a week, whether you do it at the turn of seasons, whether you do it on Ekadashi. I mean, people have all sorts of different personal practices of when they observe silence. But the point of that silence is for me to be able to then go into the world and carry the silence with me. It's not about now I'm interacting in the world and then I have my silence time. The silence is within. And the silence grounds us so that we can be vessels and vehicles, tools of the divine on earth. Because that's the point. The point of the peace, the point of the enlightenment is not in a vacuum. It's not my peace, my bliss, my enlightenment, I'm done, let everybody else suffer and go to hell. That's not the highest spiritual goal. My peace, my bliss, my enlightenment, so that I can then be a clear vehicle for God's will to flow through me. So that when I move through the world, I'm not moving from a place of ego. I'm not moving from a place of judgment or criticism or competition. It's not what I want, how I want it. Where's my name? Where am I? Where's it? It's not about that. It's about me as an instrument, me as a tool. I'll tell you a personal story about this. When I was taking sannyas, which is the official ordination or initiation into a monastic life, the life of wearing the orange robes, the life of being a sannyasi. When I was going to take this, I was very, very blessed because I was given sannyas by Puja Swamiji, my guru, and another very amazingly divine, holy, revered saint of India. And he's from Mathura, near Vrindavan, the land of Krishna. And he's someone whose life is really dedicated to the monastic process. And he has dozens, if not hundreds, of people he has initiated into this order. And so when I was getting ready for it, I said to Puja Swamiji, so what are all the things that I need to do? And Puja Swamiji said, go and talk to Maharaji, and he will tell you. This is what he does so frequently. So now it's important to mention that he is very, very traditional, very rooted in the letter of the law as well as the spirit of the law. The absolute most traditional, disciplined ways of what the scriptures say, what the religion has, what the Dharma is, all of this. So I go and I sit with him and I say, Maharaji, tell me what to do. We've got 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, whatever it was before I'm going to have this. What are all the things I need to do in preparation? So he says to me, for the week before the ceremony, you need to observe fast. You can eat just fruits and milk. And he said, and you need to mostly stay in your room. Observe silence. Just do your japa, do your meditation. Don't come out, except if it's essential, but otherwise stay in your room. And I said, okay. And he said, now repeat back to me. And I said, okay. I'm going to mostly stay in my room, do my meditation, do my japa, not come out. And he stops me, he interrupts. He says, unless Puja Swamiji has anything for you to do, at which point you will show up immediately and you will do whatever is required. And I said, okay. And I said, and I will mostly observe silence. And he says, unless Puja Swamiji asks you something or needs you to speak, at which point you will not even think of playing a game of charades and making him guess what you're trying to say. You will speak. I said, and I will observe fast. I'll just have fruits and milk. And he says, unless that diet makes you too weak to do whatever Puja Swamiji tells you to do, at which point you will have a full meal immediately. And what I love about that story, it's now been 18 years, is from one who is so deeply rooted in the letter of the law, the teachings, the Dharma, here's how it has to be. But when you're enlightened, the truth overpowers and comes through everything. And the truth is, all of that, the silence, the meditation, the being alone, is all to make you this clear vehicle for God's work. It's not instead of God's work. And so there should never be a time, even when you're in the most intense sadhana in preparation for this rite of initiation, that he himself was personally coming to do. There's not a moment in which that should supersede the opportunity to be of service. And so this for me is the teaching of where the two come together. Is observe silence. Unless, of course, you are needed to speak. And that doesn't just mean in the 1 hour or 2 hours or 1 day or whatever amount of time you've dedicated for silence. It means all the time. Observe silence. Stop the unnecessary chatter. Stop the gossip. Observe silence as much as you can, all the time. And speak when necessary. And do as much meditation and japa as you can, unless there is something required of you in service. Don't waste the energies of the body in unnecessary things. Fill them with your spiritual practice. And when there is work, when there is service, you use it. And you eat as lightly as you can. Doesn't have to always be just fruit and milk, but as lightly as you can. Unless that makes you too weak to do what you need to do, at which point you add in just as much as is necessary to keep the body. So this for me has been a guiding principle, not just of that week, but a guiding principle of my whole life. Of how these two things go together.